God really was a calming presence in my life. It was like I said, there was days where I drifted, days where I, really approached him, but those days where I really approached him in those times, I felt so much.
This is Sports Spectrum, bringing Jesus into the sports conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hunter Henry, welcome to Sports Spectrum, buddy. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, doing well. Thanks for having me on, man.
It's great to talk to you. Great to have you here on Sports Spectrum. I want to start with an Instagram post that you shared back in August, and it was a picture of you and your son Ace, and you simply captioned it with, "This is my new why." So tell me, let's start there. Tell me about being a dad and how that has changed you over the past year and finding a new why.
Yeah, wow. Man, it's been incredible. It's really been awesome, man. Everything that I expected and so much more, man. And it's been just eye-opening, just seeing him grow, seeing him change throughout these months, man. It happens so fast. He's 9 months now, man. And I feel like I blinked and those 9 months went by. I know everybody now tells me that, you blink and they're 18 and they're gone. So, man, I feel like me and my wife have done a good job trying to enjoy each stage with him. And just the impact he's made on my life, man, just giving me a new perspective. And just, it's been incredible, man, just to watch him, to love on him, just to be there for him, be there for my wife too. And it's been really, really cool.
What's been your favorite moment? It's only been 9 months, obviously, and there will be many, many more, my friend, but what's been your favorite moment maybe over the past few months as a dad?
Man, I think it's so fun now. He's interacting now, and like he's able to kind of really recognize me. And I just FaceTimed him earlier before he went to sleep, and he'll just even just seeing me on the phone, man, and he like lights up a big smile.
Yeah.
Like it makes my day so much better, and just whatever I'm doing, just seeing the impact that I can have and just bring a smile to him. Like he brings such a joy and like smile and just comfort to me, just from that just little smile and the laughter and all that. I think that's one of the biggest things recently that's just so fun.
So you add that in with the change of coming to a new team last year, and obviously you had a really good year last year, career high 9 touchdowns. What was that like for you adjusting to a new place? Obviously you signed the deal, so you got to choose where you were going to go. But you come to New England and so much history and so many, successful seasons, and you got back to the playoffs last year. What was that like for you to kind of transition to a new home in New England last year?
It was different. It was different. We were on the West Coast for 5 years. So
yeah,
going from coast to coast, it was definitely a big change, different change of culture, different change of just the area. It was definitely a culture shock and different in a way, but I think I needed that change. I really feel like it was time. Like I needed some change. I needed to kind of get out of my comfort zone a little bit, especially professionally, like work wise. In football, like I needed a change, and it was definitely a blessing. Obviously, with the contract and all that stuff that comes with it, but also just in terms of the culture, football, and everything. Like I needed change, and it was a huge blessing.
It's a little colder. I'm here in Connecticut, so I'm not far from the New England area. It's a little colder up here in those November, December, January months. That must have been an adjustment too, just having to really get acclimated to playing in cold weather a lot more.
Yeah, it had been a while. I mean, we played a few teams on the East Coast late in the year when I was over there in California, but it day in, day out, man, it's a little different when you got to come out of the house with it. So it's good for you. Kind of builds a little grit.
Well, that Buffalo game, wasn't it the Buffalo game that you guys won? Was it a Monday night game and it was like 50-mile-an-hour winds?
Yeah, that was probably one of the more wild games I've ever been a part of, for sure.
It's just crazy when you come to the Northeast, how it's unpredictable. And I'm always in awe of how players are able to adapt to it and adjust and just go out and play when you know the elements are there. So it'll be fun to watch this year. Hopefully you don't get too many cold weather games. It'll be cold, but hopefully we get more, maybe a little bit warmer winter this year for you, Hunter.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm not planning on it.
Exactly, right. You got to be prepared for everything. I mentioned you're on your Instagram page and that post about your son. On that IG page also talks a lot about your faith, and it mentions AO1, playing for an audience of one. Tell us what that means to you, playing for an audience of one and making God a priority in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I think it applies to everything in my life. An audience of one. It basically just means literally, I'm not here to please the worldly things. I'm not here to please uh, everybody, like all the outside noise, really. And I'm really here to please God and what He sees for me in my life. And I think it applies to everything in your life, but really it was a camp I went to. It's called Ultimate Training Camp with Athletes in Action, where
Yeah.
I really kind of I had heard that phrase before, but obviously they emphasized it in a lot of ways there. Um, like applying it to like actually playing football in a way. So like when I'm on the field, like I don't doesn't matter like what my coaches. I mean, obviously you got to listen to the plays and all that stuff. There's stuff that goes into it. But I'm
Sure.
not listening to the media. I'm not listening to like fans. Like I'm not like worried about everything else going on, but really like I'm out there to glorify God. And He gave me these abilities, and this is a way for me to go out there and worship Him. So really, like I always like say I apply it to everything, but really on the football field, man, it's like I'm out there playing for one reason, and that's the Creator that gave me these abilities.
When did your faith in Christ become that priority for you?
Yeah. So my dad is a pastor, non-denominational church. So I actually grew up in the church. Um, Became a believer when I was young, but I felt like my faith really became my own, and I really like made my faith my own thing. That instead of my parents' faith was really when I got to college. It was after my freshman year, and it just kind of took off from there. Obviously, there's been some things that have tested me. Obviously, as a believer, we're going to get tested constantly, and there's obviously lots of trials, lots of different things that you go through, but I think it was really after my freshman year of college is really when that thing when it took off.
Yeah, and you mentioned trials and difficult times, and obviously I think that's when our faith is truly tested. And often we can either draw closer to God or sometimes drift a little further away from Him. I'm thinking about, the year that you had the knee injury and you lost your whole season. That had to be a tough time. What has that been like for you when you've gone through those moments and trying to cling to God and not drift away and find yourself bitter or angry?
Yeah, it's a battle, man. It really is. And I mean, there's been definitely times where I drifted. Um, just to be completely transparent, and just be very selfish and try to figure it out all on my own, and really the reason of behind everything. But towards the end of my process is really when I looked back and was like, dang, like I I grew a lot in that in a way too. Like God put me through that for a reason. It was kind of weird the timing of it too. Like me and my wife got married that year, and when you're hurt in the NFL, me and my wife had been doing backstory to it. Me and my wife had been doing long distance for a few years before that, my first couple years, and so we spent time together, but we didn't get to spend a ton. And when I got hurt that year, and that was our first year of marriage, when you're hurt in the NFL, you're not around a lot. You're focusing on your rehab, and so you get a little bit more time to yourself. Obviously, you're doing a lot with rehab, but still, you don't go on road trips and do a bunch of stuff. So it's a little different. So I got to spend a lot of time with my wife,
Hmm.
and really cultivate that relationship early on in our marriage. And I look back on those times, man, and like I wish I kind of would have appreciated a little bit more. Sometimes I was still just in the dumps of being hurt, but at the same time, still we got to spend so much time together, and she was right there with me through the whole thing. And I feel like we grew a lot in our relationship at that time just because we got to spend a lot of time together. So God always has a plan, man. He really does, and put me through those things for definitely for a reason.
What about the time when you were rehabbing? And I'm sure there's frustration, but I'm sure there's a mindset too. Like, I'm going to get back, I'm going to be stronger. And you came back and you played well. and it led to that contract. But what was that time like rehabbing? Both, I think the physical part, as fans or as people listening to this, they're probably thinking, man, what was that like to just get back? But then
Yeah.
also the mental part and the spiritual part that all kind of comes
Yeah,
into play.
man, it's hard. It was really hard because I had never really, I'd been through some injuries, but I'd never been taken away where it's like, all right, you're not really playing this whole year,
Yeah.
like you can't, like you literally can't. Like there's been so many injuries where I played through, gone through, but I couldn't do it. It was out of my control, and the mental part was the hardest thing, man. I as an athlete, as a competitor, man, you're obsessed with your craft in a way. Like I'm obsessed with like trying to get better at football, and I couldn't do that. So I kind of became obsessed with my rehab in a way too. And sometimes I came to a flaw a little bit too much, sometimes a little bit too much,
Yeah.
maybe doing too many things and having to try all this kind of different stuff. But when I really sat back, and God really was a calming presence in my life. It was, like I said, there was days where I drifted, days where I, really approached him. But those days where I really approached him in those times, I felt so much more comfort, freedom, and just able to attack it in a different light. So it definitely helped my mindset in a lot of ways on coming back and making it a little easier.
You mentioned when you got to New England, you sort of had this culture shock a little bit, just surprise, you're going from West Coast to East Coast, but spiritually, what was that like acclimating yourself within the confines of a team that has a few veterans there? I'm speaking specifically about a guy like Matthew Slater, Devin McCourty, who are believers, who've been on this podcast and on this show and love the Lord. But what was that like for you kind of getting acclimated to a team from a spiritual perspective?
Yeah, man, it was awesome. This place has a great group of dudes, man, and jumped right away, man. Like, look up to Slate and DMAC like a ton, man. Seeing those guys, their faith, and just how they carry themselves on a day-to-day basis, man. It's a blessing. It really is. I didn't know what I was getting my hands into coming to the Patriots, but like that was a huge blessing. Just having that community immediately stepping in, that helped me and my wife a ton.
And a couple of weeks ago, we had a guy named Joe Kim on our podcast, who's one of the D-line kind of coaches and director of, I can't remember the exact title that he has. I know he's helping out with the offense or the defensive line, but I met him back in, when was it? I think it was in July, late June, and got to know him. And, as I was talking to him, I thought, wow, what a neat guy to have around the team. That's intense. You can tell he's just fiery, but he's also a committed follower of Christ and wants to do it the right way with a little bit bigger goal in mind than just winning championships. I thought that was pretty neat. What's he been like, to be around?
He was really honestly the first guy I met before I got to meet, Slater and DMAC and some of the other guys around the locker room. He was actually one of the first guys I got to meet and, kind of plugged me in to different people, what to look out for, all this kind of stuff. So I've leaned on Joe Kim a lot. I really appreciate it. He texts me all the time and sends me stuff and recommends things and all that stuff. So he's been huge, man. You bounce things off of him football wise, but also just like spiritually wise, like talking through things with him. Like he's so wise, and it's a blessing to definitely have him around the building.
You ever had a coach like that before? Another coach that might have been, obviously they want to coach you up and they have a lot of wisdom, but from a spiritual perspective or a deeper perspective than just football and X's and O's?
Yeah, I had a tight end coach in college. It was my tight end coach my whole career actually there. That was a strong believer. He's actually now the offensive coordinator at Illinois. So really happy for him, a step up for sure. But he was kind of the same way. I mean, we kind of went through the trenches of, I was kind of growing at the position with him, like football wise, tight end. It was kind of a new like position going into college with him. And so we were kind of growing in that aspect, but he was someone I really looked up to spiritually too. And just how he approached it, how he approached me. I mean, we were able to bounce things off of each other, talk through things too. But kind of having that balance, and we spent a lot of time together too. So we were in the trenches together a lot.
I have to imagine that was a pretty, you talked about after your freshman year growing in your faith, but just growing as a person in college. And you had a great career, obviously, winner of the John Mackey Award in 2015. But that must have been such an interesting time as the son of a pastor, but being a football player. And I just think athletes, maybe more than any people that I've talked to who are followers of Christ, struggle the most with the identity, of being identified. Like I identified you, Hunter Henry, New England Patriots tight end. Suddenly you're identified by people who know you as this football player, when the word of God says completely the opposite, right? It says you are identified as a follower of Christ, as a child of God. What was that like for you, maybe in college, and maybe you can even take it to the pros on just working through that identity?
It's a constant struggle, man. It really is. I think we all go through it, man. And we just bounce it off of each other. I mean, it's just so hard to with anything, man. There's idols in life, right? And that we all kind of get drawn to, and our identity and like football in itself, it's just like with anybody, like a job or
Mm-hmm.
money, like anything that you can idolize. Like it's just hard, man. Like it can be hard because you get so consumed in it. Um, but when you have good people around you, I think, and just have a strong community that kind of reminds you of who you are. And I feel like I have a small group of, like, just my family is really big in my life too, just reminding me of who I am in Christ. Like my dad is very influential in that. Just constant text of just like reminding me, like, I love you. I don't just love you because you're a football player. Like I love you because the man you are, the dad you are,
Mm-hmm.
the man of God you are, and just reminding me of those things in my life more than what everybody else can say on the outside, like football player, the tight end, the guy that's helping my fantasy team, whatever it is. I think it's just people like close to me that remind me of my true identity.
That has to be so frustrating, constantly hearing about your fantasy team, or our fans' fantasy team, I should say.
Yeah, it's changed the game for sure. It's different, man. You feel like you could have a good game, but in the eyes of some fantasy owners out there, it might not be the best. So it is
Do
what it is,
players
man.
play fantasy? Do you play? Have you ever played fantasy?
I have not, so I don't really know the background to it. I mean, I understand it in a way, but I
Yeah.
don't play.
But I imagine there's teammates that have played, right? There's guys in the
Oh
league.
yeah, for sure, for sure. I think there's definitely guys in the league that play.
Yeah. Interesting timing too with, the beginning of the season. And we just did, as we record this, it's right before the start of the season. We did our fantasy draft today and your name popped up somewhere as I'm getting prepared to talk to you. And I was like, all right, we're not going to talk I don't even want to ask him about fantasy football. I told you that, right? I don't want to ask you about really what's going on too much on the field, because you're probably constantly bombarded with those questions. It has to be tough to separate yourself from the football player and the person. I mean, just each and every day, a media personality that might be sticking a microphone in your face or whatever. Just different. It's different during this time of year.
Yeah, you're always on, man. You always got to be on, especially this day and age, man. You're always on at wherever you go too. So
Yeah.
I kind of like, it's kind of funny. I always tell this story too. Like growing up as a pastor's kid, like in the town that we lived like around and everything, like we were always kind of having to be on too. Like we were the pastor's kids and like everybody kind of knew. So like I kind of grew up with that. So like
Yeah.
kind of worked out to what it is now.
What does spiritual disciplines look like during a season? Obviously, I'm not saying it's easy, because even just me being at home here in Connecticut, it's not easy. But during a long season, what does that look like for you, growing in your faith, staying discipled in the midst of also studying your opponent and your playbook and getting prepared and make sure your body's right for each game and all of that? But what does that look like from a discipleship standpoint in the midst of a season?
Yeah, I've kind of found, so I think a thing that helps me especially is just in the morning time. I'm driving to work. I have about a 20-25 minute drive into work. I've found the past I right now I'm listening to the Passion Daily podcast, and
Hmm.
it's just like a short devotional. It's about 8 to 9 minutes, and just kind of goes through a passage every single day. Like right now they're going through Psalms, just a psalm like a day, almost basically breaking it down.
Yeah.
And I listen to that kind of almost every morning on my drive into work, and then I listen to some worship music just to kind of set mind to kind of what I wanted to be that day. And, you know, really kind of set the intention of the day and what I want it to be. So, and it's kind of just say a quick little prayer. Like, it doesn't have to be anything crazy as I go in, just for, God to use me as an instrument for him that day, and just help me to trust him, and just anything simple like that. And that's kind of my routine in the morning. Within our team, like I said, we have some guys that are awesome. So we have a great Bible study. We have a chaplain on the team named Jewel Robinson now. That's awesome. That pours into us, in this craziness of what the season is. We have a chapel every week. We have a awesome couples study that we kind of get to come together away from the facility with our wives, girlfriends, everybody.
Who's leading the couple study? Is it Slate?
Slate was leading it last year. So I think Jua and his wife, I think, are going to do it this year. But Slate and Shahzad were leading it last year, and we just have a great group, man. And it's cool to have that kind of community to build us all up.
Yeah, I have to imagine, especially the highs and the lows of a long season, and you can get so caught up in a win or a loss, and like having that constant has to help you and keeping you grounded. As we wind down, just curious, I ask this question a lot to our guests here on the show. When you think about the season of life you're in right now, new dad, right? Season upon us. What do you think God is showing you and teaching you right now in your life? What's he been kind of impressing upon your heart? Maybe what's a lesson that you've been learning from him?
Ooh, man. Probably patience. I'm always working on patience, man. But oh man, just going into the season, it's kind of a new light we had our son at the end of last year, but like just patience and everything, with my son, coming home from work and having patience, when it's a long day. You kind of been going through it at the facility or whatever it is. It was a hard day. It was a good day. It was a bad day, and not just bringing that home with me, but having patience with my son, my wife, and really being present in that moment too. I think it's patience is probably the biggest word I would say, but also I think having being present in my home, especially right now. I think that's something that's big, that I'm trying to have as well.
And those spiritual disciplines can actually transfer over to the field, I would imagine. You got to be patient, right? In your game plan when things are going which way, and you have to obviously be present in the moment and take it kind of one play at a time. So that can actually transfer over, right?
Oh yeah, everything is applicable to everything, man. In a way, it's you got to be patient on the field. You got to be the same guy every day. You got to be very present in who you are, and try to be the same person every single day for sure.
Yeah, well, he is Hunter Henry from the New England Patriots. Hey, man, thanks for being here on the show. I've been excited to chat with you and kind of hear a little bit of your story. Hopefully we'll do it again soon, and best wishes for the rest of this season, and hopefully we'll catch up again sometime in the future. Thanks for joining us.
Awesome, dude. Thank you, man.
Thanks so much for watching today on Sports Spectrum. Make sure you click that subscribe button so you don't miss any other videos. And if you want more stories on sports and faith, check out our website, sportsspectrum.com. Okay, take two.